And we are live. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. We have a very special guest today. We have the Taylor Otwell. Taylor, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. I'm rocking and rolling. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It was a good weekend for me. Hopefully, everyone in the chat. I know we have already had quite a bit of people in the chat already. So a lot of people waiting. So if you are here and you are uh, ready to see what the AI SDK has in store for us, and also just to hear Taylor's thoughts on the AI SDK, why he built it. I'm excited for that personally. I haven't gotten a chance to talk to Taylor yet about the AI SDK specifically. But if you're here, let us know where you're watching from. And I guess Taylor, what's a good question? What's something that's been on your mind like outside of work, like maybe TV show, what something like that?
Oh man, I don't even know. Everything's been a blur since I did the AI SDK, and then I was in India in Dubai for Larrykonn India.
I
So
know
like, I feel
you've
like
been
I'm
all over the
like,
place.
yeah, I feel like this is like maybe the first week. I feel like I'm kind of getting back in the groove.
There you go.
Yeah, so I don't
Right.
know. I don't even know what's going on in the world.
I guess what was your whenever you travel somewhere, what is like the food or like thing that you try to make sure you do?
Mm. I try to just like have, especially if I'm going somewhere like India, try to have like whatever food that the people there really like. So,
Okay.
for example, like the first time I went to India, I was at the hotel and like the room service guy, I got back kind of late to the hotel and he was like, do you want any food? Like, what do you need? It was like almost midnight. And he was like, I was like, just bring me like whatever you would eat at this
Yeah.
time, like whatever your favorite thing to have would be, just like bring that and I'll just try it.
Yeah.
So I just try to do stuff like that. Just so I can get a feel for like what people are like, what they're really doing in these places.
I love it. I guess then for everyone watching, I already see a bunch of all over the place. So we got Evan from Switzerland, Bakersfield, California. Glad to see you here. Albania, Kuwait, UK. I love just like the how global everyone is. India, good day from Pakistan. I guess everyone, what time is it for you right now? I always love to see that. And then also kind of similar to Taylor, what is the thing that you always tell people to try whenever they are visiting your region? So food that you
That's a
always
good
tell people
question.
to try.
Oh, that's a great question, actually. I think like in Arkansas and maybe other states in the South, a lot of people like to try the barbecue, and when I
Barbecue.
say
Okay.
barbecue, I don't mean,
Like Texas barbecue.
like, yeah, yeah, like barbecue with like barbecue sauce, like pulled
Okay.
pork, brisket with barbecue sauce, stuff like that. Around here, it's a lot of like pulled pork, but yeah, in Texas, it's more like the brisket.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Uh,
I
but
I
yeah,
I, I have not been to Arkansas. In Arizona, I guess I would tell people to try any hole in the wall Mexican restaurant. Like that would be my
yeah,
go-to to try.
we
Unless you're
have a
like
lot
in
of good Mexican places here too. It's so good.
Yeah, it's great. Unless you're like in Scottsdale, then there's some like good burger places that I would
Mm,
recommend. Good old
nice.
Greg's sausage roll. I have not had one, unfortunately. I've heard good things. 9 p.m. Dubai time. Well, thanks so much for staying up late. We got 14 o'clock here in Brazil. 10:03 p.m. in Pakistan. I think that might be oh no, never mind. 1:03 a.m. right now in PH. All awesome. I love it. Macedonia, 1603. Glad or 1803. Glad to have you all here. Any Ghanaian developers in the room, says Ovak for you. Joshua, what is
Uh,
going on, gents? I'm excited for this. Well, we're excited to have you here, Joshua. Glad to have you here. And Liam says, I'll buy you a sausage roll next time you're in the UK, Josh. Okay. Sounds good to me. I am always down for some food. I did have Taco Bell when I was in the UK, so and it was
Love
it was
Taco
actually
Bell.
pretty good.
Man, I've got a Taco Bell. It's like right outside my neighborhood. I mean, I'm talking. It's
Oh,
like
really?
across the street, basically.
I didn't know. I didn't know this about you. If you love Taco Bell, then that's awesome. I love it.
It's
What's
so quick. I can like run over there and get like lunch and be back home legit like 10 minutes.
yeah?
Even if I eat at the restaurant.
what's your go-to current Taco Bell menu item right now?
Oh man, like if I just want to be like really efficient and in and out, I'll do just like two bean burritos and a drink and
Okay,
crush them and then dip out of there. It's like
there you
five
go.
minutes. What do you get?
I get like either the cheesy bean and rice burrito, like that's kind of
Hmm.
like one of my go-to, or I always love like anything chicken from them. So like there's the cheesy chicken chipotle flatbread thing. I like that.
Yeah,
But
nice.
yeah, like cheesy bean rice burritos I've always had since I was like in high school. So those are kind of like my, go to for nostalgia's sake.
Yeah, for sure.
And then a Baja Blast. I used to do full sugar. Now I'm Baja Blast Zero.
my
It's
my
fine.
daughter does the Baja Blast Zero too.
Yeah. I tried it full sugar again, like for the first time in like, I don't know, 10 years. And I was like, wow, this is a lot. I can
That's
feel it.
funny.
Awesome. Well, glad to have everyone here. It's crazy to see how many people are here. Mostly I to see Taylor and also to hear about this AI SDK. So if you do have questions in the chat, be sure to drop them. I'll try my best to be watching, but mostly the goal of this live stream is one, to get Taylor's thoughts on the AI SDK, what it is, how you would build with it within Laravel, maybe like why it was built, and then two, hopefully like towards the latter half of this stream, being able to build something. There's some projects that I've built that we can kind of show off the AI SDK and just like what's capable of. But I think like the perfect part is being able to say, okay, what actually is capable when you're building things, and then the why. So again, if you do have questions, again, everyone's kind of shouting out where they're from. I love it. Keep doing that. It's awesome to see people from all over the world being able to come together and say, hey, this is some cool things that we're building with this cool software that we love. So Taylor, powered by Taco Bell, what was the reason? Like, why did I think like the first thing I saw you start talking about the AI SDK, it was probably, I don't know, probably in October, November of last year. I could be wrong on the timeline, but why did that come into fruition? That was one of your projects, I think, that you kind of picked up and you're like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
dedicate my life to this.
Yeah. I mean, obviously everyone was just kind of tinkering around with AI stuff as they had been for the last few years. And it's just like such a important part of the dev workflow at this point. It felt like we needed some sort of first party opinion on interacting with AI providers. I mean, just like we have like opinions on sending email or like queuing jobs, and just like this is becoming such a common part of like what people do when they build apps, that made a lot of sense to bring something first party and like have like an offering here. I usually try to think of like, if I'm going to build something into the framework, I kind of think to myself like, is this applicable to like 70-80% of devs, in the Laravel world? Like if I'm
Mhm.
debating whether something needs to be in the framework.
Yeah.
And then like for a package, like the AI SDK is maybe a little bit more lenient. Like, is this applicable to maybe half of Laravel devs, like in the world? Like, probably so, right? With AI, and probably increasing dramatically over time. So, made sense to have something. And yeah, I did build it myself, and it was the first package I've written at Laravel in a couple of years. The last stuff I wrote was a Livewire Volt and Laravel Folio. And
Yeah.
then as we were like building cloud, building Nightwatch, I didn't really write a lot of packages at the time. And now I'm kind of like back in the driver's seat with the AI SDK. I just kind of like one, most of the other people here were busy with other stuff, right? So it's like, so someone has to build it, but everyone's busy. So it's like, well, it'd be good for me to like get back in the code and like building something fresh, and it sounds fun. So like I'll tackle it. And plus I had some ideas for what I wanted to do with it. There was already some cool stuff being done in the community around AI stuff with like TJ Miller's work on Prism, which we kind of built upon in the AI SDK. I kind of see like that as like almost like a query builder and eloquent type of relationship. Like, I think the AI SDK, I tried to put like a little bit more opinions on top than people might typically build
Yeah.
in like kind of a generic AI SDK.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's awesome. I guess like for those in the chat, some quick questions as well. So um will be paid or free. It is already out, Sala, and it is free. It's a free package to use for the AI SDK. I guess for people who are just joining us as well, thank you so much. We're going to kind of take the first little bit, talking a little bit to Taylor about his thoughts about why we built it, what's it for, and then the second half of this stream, we'll be able to jump into some code and see, okay, what does this look like practically building in today's day and age. But for those joining, what is your favorite outside of the AI SDK? Because that's a little bit of a curve or home run type of question. What is your favorite Laravel package, either first party or third party? Love to hear it in the chat. Um, Taylor, what's your favorite package that you've built outside of the AI SDK?
Oh man, if it's like something that's in Laravel, it'd probably be Eloquent. It's
Okay.
also the hardest thing I've pretty much ever built.
Yeah.
If it's like a package, I'm a pretty big fan of like. I think Reverb is cool. I think Echo is cool. Like kind of the real time stuff in Laravel. What else do we even have? Um, let me look at the docs. We've accumulated quite a few packages these days.
There's quite a bit out there.
I mean, I
My,
think Octane is pretty cool. To some extent, like the bulk of Octane is sort of handled by other people, right? Like the Franken PHP team and Swool and stuff like that. And
yeah.
just the ability to like boot the Laravel app and kind of keep feeding your requests really quickly. Um, yeah,
Pete Bishop said, "My favorite package is Pennant. Cannot live without Fortify." It's crazy how many packages there are that the Laravel ecosystem has, especially when on our Laravel YouTube channel during the Advent season of last year. So for 24 days, and then a special guest message from Taylor on the 25th day. We had one video for every package, and there were some packages that we didn't make a video for. So enough to have at least 24 videos is pretty crazy,
yeah,
and some of
that's
those
wild.
could be split up as well. But yeah, I think my personal favorite is Cashier, and I didn't really get into Cashier too much because when I started my Laravel journey, I started with Spark, and so
Hmm.
I didn't
Hmm.
really have to touch Cashier too much. It was kind of already done for me. Uh,
Yeah,
but over the last year using Cashier, I was like, oh, this is actually incredibly easy.
man. Yeah, we're working on some new cashier stuff and some new Fortify stuff actually. That hopefully we can show pretty soon. But like, man, cashier is like that is a I don't think like back when I first wrote Cashier, like integrating with Stripe and all that, it is a lot of work to like catch all the webhooks, store all that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of people find that package pretty valuable.
Yeah, and especially if you look outside of the Laravel ecosystem, most people, have their
Yeah,
own set way of, okay, hey, here's how to not make Stripe incredibly difficult to work with and everything like that. So it's valuable. We got some people saying Reverb, queues and jobs. We'll call that as part of a package. Working with queues and jobs is incredibly easy. Yes, love for Octane. Prism is insane. I agree. We got Inertia, love Laravel Nova,
yeah,
favorite, love Octane, Sail Octane Reverb, Fortify. I love it. I love it.
that sounds
Reverb is
cool.
also cool. I do love Reverb. Makes everything easy. So Taylor, when it comes to the AI SDK, how is this different than maybe like working with AI in Laravel? So how is this different than like a Boost, for example, or even MCP? Where does this
Yeah,
SDK kind of fall into?
yeah. So like right now we have kind of three AI related packages at Laravel. Um, I I think MCP was actually the first one. So MCP is MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. MCP, right? Model Context
Yes,
Protocol, I
model.
think.
Yep.
Um, and it is basically a way to like I think of it as a way to like expose a standardized API for LLMs and AI things to talk to. So like I have an app on the internet and I want to allow like ChatGPT to do things or some other tool to do things with that, then I can use MCP to expose functionality. And OpenAI started coming out with this new kind of like, I don't even know if it's out of beta yet, but eventually like sort of an app directory of things you can like interact with from ChatGPT and things like that. But that's
Yeah.
all kind of powered by MCP. So then there's Boost, which is actually a little local MCP server that runs on your machine that Claude Code and Cursor and other like agentic dev tools like Open Code can plug into. And what it does is it just like makes available some tools to those agents so that they can query the Laravel docs, they can run Tinker commands, they can inspect your database schema. And so the idea is it improves like the quality of the Laravel code that things like Claude Code and Cursor can write because they have access to the latest docs. So like if I release a feature, tomorrow in Laravel, because we release every Tuesday, LLMs have like no idea that that feature exists, right? Because they've been trained on old data. But Boost actually allows us to feed them like the latest info. So they always have access to the most up to date docs. If you're writing Laravel and you're using Claude Code or Cursor, which at this point you probably should be using some sort of like AI assistance. I think installing Boost is just like a no-brainer because it's like a free package that is probably only going to make the quality of your code better. So I would definitely install that. So that's the second AI package we released, and now the AI SDK is the third, which is sort of like a streamlined, unified interface for working with different AI providers like OpenAI, Gemini, Anthropic. So I want to generate some text, or I want to stream some text, or I want to generate an image or audio. I can do that with the AI SDK through a unified interface and kind of try different models, try different providers without going and like researching what is the what's the HTTP endpoint for generating an image on Gemini, and now what is it on OpenAI? It's just a really streamlined way to work with AI.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, someone asked the question, for someone that does not know what Laravel AI SDK is, how would you describe it in a few words? I think Taylor just did that, but I think
Yeah.
if I could put it into other words, and maybe Taylor, you can correct me, it's like an eloquent way of interacting with all these things that now in this world of AI, you would expect you have to interact with at some point in time.
Yeah, I think so too. And then, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later, it sort of is integrated with a lot of Laravel's the rest of its stack. So, like, if I generate an image, I have a method to like store that image using the file
Mm,
system stuff in Laravel. Or if I want to like queue the generation of an image, it's actually integrated with the queue system in Laravel. So, it's an AI SDK that really leans into like the full stackness of Laravel.
I love it. I love it. When you think of, and some people are saying your video quality isn't doing too good. I don't know if there's a way for you to bump it up, but if that
I
means
don't know.
you start stuttering, I don't know. But for everyone who's saying that,
Oh, I'm on standard definition, so I can go up to. Do I go up to full high definition? Is that recommended?
full high
1080p.
definition, maybe I
Let's
would.
see.
Yeah,
How
let's try
do
it
I
out.
look good now? Do I look better?
Let's see. I think it
I
looks
should look
better.
crisper.
Should
Yeah,
look video enhance, says someone.
yeah, exactly.
Taylor will get
Powered by
on that
AI.
just to get you. Yeah. Sweet. But yeah, let's take a turn into, okay, all of this AI stuff is fun to work with, but I'm curious of maybe what you're seeing within current applications, enterprise applications, etc. Or just why would people start adding AI into their apps? What are the things that people are generally going to be using it for? What are some practical applications that you can now build with the AI SDK?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of like the most common things that you see people build with it are sort of like almost text summarization type features. So like on Nightwatch for us, which we've already launched, was like you have an issue in Nightwatch, right? Like an exception has occurred, or you have like some slow query. You can actually click a button in Nightwatch to let the AI write like a summary of that.
Mm,
So, and it will tell you like, okay, here's kind of what happened. Here's some suggested solutions. Here's where you might look next or whatever. I think that sort of like category of AI usage is super common. Like I have a bunch of text that I need to basically like classify or summarize. It's super easy to do that with AI, and pretty fast and affordable. Um, I think another like chunk of AI is around like audio and transcription and sort of real time applications. That's another like popular use case for AI. I mean, this is kind of, I don't know if this is like people consider this like full on AI in the normal sense of the word phrase, but I mean, I think it kind of is related, is around like embeddings and vector search, which is part of the
mm,
AI SDK where we can generate embeddings from a given like string of text, vector embeddings, store them in a database, and then do semantic search querying and then AI powered re-ranking of those results for like the most semantically similar results. So, I think those are like some of the more common use cases. I think that then there's like image generation, which I think is a little bit more like, I don't know if it's a little bit more on like the consumer side of like the use cases for AI where you're generating sort of fun images and things like that. But at Laravel, we've been using it mainly, I would say, for like text summarization, issue summarization, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And the neat part, I think, with the AI SDK, kind of like you said, is now you have this one central point. I know that in the past within things, there are great packages like Prism that I know you said that the AI SDK is built on top of and expands in a lot of ways. But it's great that you can kind of have this one central place to say, okay, when I'm working with images or when I'm working with audio, the infrastructure behind it, the code behind it is exactly the same. I'm
Hmm.
curious your thoughts, and when we dive into building something within the code, I've already used this within things like Claude Code and Boost and everything like that. It's crazy how much better it gets because it's just one package for the LLMs that you're working with to say, okay, hey, this audio is going to be generated the same way that I generated this chat. Do you think that's intentional that you built? Like, what are your thoughts on that when it comes to this new world of coding in that sense?
In terms of like how much effort do I put into sort of like the elegance of the API and
Yeah,
things like that?
either that or is that elegance of the API matter now?
Yeah, I know. It's something I've thought about myself. I think it does sort of matter in the sense of like the LLMs still do well with things that are like easy to parse and understand and
Yep.
summarize and read about. I don't know if it's like, obviously the LLM doesn't derive the same joy from it that like the human consumer might. And I used to put like a lot of effort into these sort of like whimsical, fun APIs because as
Yeah.
humans writing the code, it's kind of fun to like use these tools that are sort of like charming in a way. And maybe it still is, but yeah, I mean, it's still important, I think, to have good API design just for the discoverability of that LLM to be able to figure out what the heck's going on.
Yeah.
And I think like we've tweeted about this a little bit, but like frameworks that sort of lean into conventions and structure, I think do well with LLMs. I think we've seen that with like Laravel and things like Rails, where like the LLMs are doing a pretty good job because there's lots of training data. There's these very conventional structure to the projects where it's like there's a models directory, there's a controllers directory. So they kind of like it's very discoverable.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree, and it's neat to see you know, I feel like the joy from those clean APIs comes now of seeing it, when you're looking at your maybe code being generated, or you're just looking back and it's very easy to know, okay, this is exactly what's happening, rather than having to
Mhm.
jump through 50 different files to say, okay, what actually is happening. It feels like even if you're not handwriting all that code, it still feels like you understand what's happening in that given
Yeah.
sense. And I think the
Yeah.
LLMs do a great job at also saying, we're using this one package, so we're going to be doing it the exact same way, another iteration of the application.
Yeah. Totally.
For those just joining, thank you so much for being here. I am joined. My name is Josh. I'm joined by Taylor Otwell. You probably know Taylor just from everything, the creator of Laravel and now the creator of Laravel AI SDK, which is what we're kind of diving into here on the stream. So if you're just joining us, let us know where you're joining from, what time it is there for you, and then what's your favorite Laravel package. But if you haven't gotten the chance, feel free to like and subscribe this video. If you're on our YouTube platform, there's a whole bunch of awesome videos that we try to put out as consistently as possible. But we're going to continue to take a look at the Laravel AI SDK and then hopefully be able to have a chance to build with it as well. Taylor, what is your favorite part before we jump into like each aspect of the AI SDK?
Mhm.
Just from an overall standpoint, what is your favorite part of the AI SDK? One that you're like, when you built it, you're
Mm.
like, yeah, this is really cool. I like that. I like this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a good question. I really like the kind of like agent class concept, which was a big part of like my initial sort of like thinking behind the AI SDK. And for those who haven't seen it, basically when you use the AI SDK, you make agent classes using like a make agent artisan command. And it's basically a class that sort of encapsulates the system instructions, the message context, the tools, maybe the schema of sort of like what you're doing with the AI provider. So you might have, for example, like, I don't know, I think in the docs we use a lot this sort of like sales coach or like lead extractor agent that's like reading transcripts of sales calls and giving advice and things. But I think it's like this very Laravel-esque way of working with AI where everything feels sort of like nice and tucked in this little class that I can reuse throughout my application. So maybe I use it in an artisan command in one place and I use it in a HTTP controller in another
Mm,
place. And it's just sort of all like self-contained. Also very easy to like test. Um, where you can fake agents, you can fake other AI interactions. I think the testing story was something I tried to like make decent. I think testing with AI is something that's often like overlooked. One, because testing AI can be hard. It's not deterministic. There's all kind of quirky things that can happen. So I tried to make that pretty streamlined.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that's an interesting standpoint that I've personally loved as I've worked with it just in like the past couple of weeks before launch. And then also even just after launch, I've built probably a couple, two or three different applications, just familiarizing myself. And one of the things that I really love about the agent SDK specifically is that aspect where it feels like, I don't know, similar to a job or an action, I guess would be a better
Yeah.
use case, but where now I'm abstracting that from every single job or controller that I'm using from that specific logic, and it lives in one place. I can change as we all know, for if you've built anything within AI, you have a prompt, and sometimes you might want to change that prompt. It sucks to have to change it in 10 different places that you're using that
Mhm.
exact text prompt. So being able to have it in one place is really awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I wanted to jump into the landing page real quick and just kind of talk through some of the aspects before getting into the rest of the actual code. I'm going to plop this open right here. Perfect. Oh, lost you for a second. There we go. Okay, so for those who don't know that the Laravel AI SDK is out, it is out. It is laravel.com/AI. So laravel.com/AI. And it's the AI toolkit with batteries included. It's as simple as running this composer require command, composer require Laravel/AI. I guess one question for you, Taylor, is you kind of mentioned it, but what was the thought behind putting this in one single package versus like, hey, here's a package for image, here's
Mhm.
a package for voice? What's your kind of thoughts or idea behind that?
Um, I kind of just wanted people to have a complete toolkit for working with AI and not have to pull in a bunch of different stuff and kind of like overthink it. So for me, it's just kind of nice to be like composer require Laravel/AI, and boom, I just sort of like have everything I need to do AI SDK related things, whether that's audio or images or whatever. um, it doesn't really like significantly increase the size of the package to add these things. All the bulk of the work is handled by people like Gemini and OpenAI, to actually
Yeah,
do this stuff. So it's just kind of nice to have this like one self-contained package to have a kind of a complete toolkit.
I love it. So yeah, just like Taylor said, one SDK for every capability. I wanted to walk through some of like the elements that we have here on the bottom of the page. Hey, that's you, that's
Mhm.
us today. But there's these kind of like, there's seven different or eight different aspects, and this is only again a small part of it. But there's prompts, context, tools, provider tools, structured output, streaming, async, and attachments. I kind of wanted to get your thoughts and walk through of like when you might use each one, because I feel like, especially in today's age, one of my thoughts is that as you are learning how to build with Laravel, of course, maybe your LLM as you're building this within Laravel or adding AI SDK so that you can build. And so for those who are installing the AI SDK, if you run and you are using AI agents, which like Taylor said, it's a good thing to be using them, I think now. If you run boost install, PHP artisan boost install, after you install the Laravel SDK, it will ask you to install the AI SDK skill, which will help the LLMs learn how to use this better. But like I think, Taylor, it's one of those things where the more you understand what can be possible behind the scenes, the better we can
Mhm.
help prompt our LLMs how to do that, and so that we know
Mhm.
what's actually happening. What do you what just in maybe like a couple sentences, maybe we can go through each one of these, and I just want to hear your thoughts on when you would use prompts, what is context, and when to use it,
Mhm.
tool, etc.
Yeah, prompts are sort of like the basic way to ask the LLM to generate some text in response to like text you give it. So, if you've ever used ChatGPT and you ask it a question and you get some text back, that is like you're prompting the LLM. Very similarly, like in the AI SDK, this is how you do that in code, right? So we're going to send the LLM some sort of like text, a question, maybe like a command. Like in this case, we're saying analyze this transcript, and we're kind of passing it along this file, and it's going to give us back some text. So this is like a super common use case for AI, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Similar to that summarization aspect that you had
yeah.
said before.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't have to be like you can see, even in this case, it's not actually like we don't have to use prompting just for chat, so to speak, right? We can just like give it a task almost
Yeah.
as a prompt, and we don't intend to ever revisit like the conversation, right? It's not an ongoing
Mm.
conversation, but we're just prompting the AI or the LLM with a specific task, and we're getting a response, and we're storing that, or we're sending it to the user or whatever. But it's not really an ongoing chat.
Yeah.
Um, and to your question, like the context tab, or yeah, well, this is actually good. You can go back, you can look at
Okay.
this. So
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is a good example of like that sales coach agent. This kind of shows you how you can kind of like encapsulate the system instructions within this class, and then we can kind of reuse this throughout of our application, so that we can just new up the sales coach agent and then give it a prompt, and we can do that in a variety of places throughout our app without sort of like re-specifying those system instructions.
Yeah. Definitely.
So that's super convenient.
One question I had here, just I think this is a good place to talk about it is so you kind of mentioned it's one central place to be able to interact with everything. So we have all these tools available to us that we see up here, but we're
Mhm.
not saying send a prompt to OpenAI or even send a prompt to a specific model or even send a prompt
Mhm.
to
Yeah, good
Gemini.
point.
How does
Yeah.
all that work behind the scenes? Like, do you have different
Yeah.
sections, providers? What happens?
Yeah. So a lot of that is driven by your config/AI file. And that's where you specify, I don't even know if that's on this page, but
We kind
we
of have
definitely talk
a little
about
bit
kind
there,
of
but
like multi-provider and failover
mhm.
and stuff. But similar, like in your Laravel app, if you've used Laravel, you probably know you have like a config/database file or a config/file systems file. When you install the AI SDK, you get a config/AI file, and that's where you configure, okay, I want my default AI provider to be OpenAI, or I want it to be Anthropic. And you can actually customize that based on the types of things you're doing. So you can have a default provider for text, like how we're prompting here, but you can have a different default provider for images. So maybe for
Mm,
images, I want to use Gemini and Nano Banana, but for text, I want to use Anthropic. And so if you specify that in your config file, you actually don't have to specify it here when you actually
yeah.
prompt. It's just going to use whatever defaults you have. Of course, we can override that in the code, but it's kind of nice. You can just sort of like use it. You don't have to remember, okay, what is the like code name for Claude Haiku dash 40, whatever that is.
Yeah.
You can just kind of,
40235. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You can just use the features.
Yeah, and it seems like that's the eloquent way in a lot of ways. Where like you're building out database queries in the same way, where I could be building in SQLite in
Mhm.
local production or local instance, and then when I put it into production, none of my code changes, just my
Yeah.
config.
Yeah, it's basically the same concept, almost like a ORM type concept for AI providers.
I love it. What about context? What is that?
Yeah, so context is kind of how you actually would build something more like a chat where,
Mm,
you know, what's kind of interesting about like dealing with LLMs is when you ask LLM for some text, ChatGPT and like Claude give the illusion that there's this ongoing state, with the LLM where it's like aware of all the previous messages. But
mm,
that's not actually the case by default. You have to feed it the whole string of messages that came before your prompt so that it knows. And you have to do that every time, actually, that you call the LLM. It has no concept of like historical interactions with you.
yeah.
So this is where you do that. So this is where like if you are building more of like a chat like interface where the user is sort of like having an ongoing conversation with an agent, you need to store those messages in a database, and then this is where you can pull them back out and give them to the RM. So we're gonna in this example we're like pulling all the recent messages for a given user, maybe the most recent 50 in this case, and we're passing them sort of in chronological order to the LLM. So this is an example of how to do that manually, but the tab you're on now kind of shows us this is built actually into the AI SDK. So, like the previous tab showed, we allow you to do that manually. But if you use this remembers conversations trait like you have here, the AI SDK will actually just do that for you.
Mm,
And the AI SDK actually is in beta. And I would say this is one of the areas that I'm like most working on between now and stable release is some kind of more features around this. But the kind of like bare bones skeleton of it is here, where if I use this remembers conversations trait, it's going to automatically store conversations in a conversations table. It's going to put the messages in like an agent messages table, and it's going to automatically pull them back out when you continue the conversation. it's just super nice because it's a lot of kind of like boilerplate code. Just store those messages, get them back out, make sure they're sorted in the right order, pass them to the LLM. So to just be able to use this trait in like one line of code, it's like, oh, I just
Yeah.
have like conversation state. That's great.
Yeah. To be able to not have to do any of this and store
Yeah,
it
right.
yourself, and then you're in this aspect of it, it's just kind of obfuscated for you.
Yeah,
I
totally.
guess there was a question that I saw in the chat that was, what was the most challenging part of building the Laravel SDK? Is this it, or is there a different part?
No, I mean, a lot of it was kind of like, I wouldn't say there was any one area that was just like, oh, wow, this is just uber hard. I would say it was a lot of just like sitting and thinking about what are the right like APIs or like, how do I
Mm,
want to design it? Kind of what we were talking about earlier of like, I really like to design things that feel like really thoughtful and really like well designed and easy to use and intuitive. And the process of arriving there is usually just like a lot of sitting there and staring at the screen, like being like, or even just like writing pseudocode of like, oh, what would be like, what would feel the best. And sometimes I'll actually go into like an empty file and just start typing code as if I'm using the ASDK, even code that just doesn't even exist, to try to discover like, oh, this feels nice or this doesn't feel nice. And
mm.
so yeah, I mean, to get back to the answer, I don't think it was any one particular thing. It was just figuring out what's the most like delightful considered APIs to give people.
Yeah, I love that. And to your point before, where you're like, you were kind of, or the posed question, does it matter? Like, I think
Yeah,
that means it does matter in a lot of sense, because it it becomes this unified platform where you know what's available to you, even if you might not be handwriting every single piece of the code. You know what's available, and it feels unified, which I think is the bigger
yeah,
aspect.
yeah,
Uh,
totally.
Jason, you mentioned Jason Torres. Okay, fine, I'll go install it. You had your Santa app that was hosted on Laravel Clouds. I'm curious of if you swap
Yeah, I
out the
remember
AI
that.
SDK. It'd be cool to see. Um, all right, Taylor, what is tools? I know we kind of talked about this a little bit on the streams before when it comes to like MCP and what's the difference
Yeah.
between tools, stuff like that. What is tools in the context of the AI SDK?
Yeah, tools are one of the coolest parts, I think, of building agents, and they kind of give you the most interesting possibilities for the kinds of things you can build because it lets you like basically supercharge LLMs with things that they couldn't do otherwise. So, and this example is a very basic example, but I'll share some other cool examples in a second where maybe you want the LLM to be able to generate like a cryptographically secure random number. I
Mm.
don't think that's actually built into LLMs. So, like, if I ask ChatGPT, hey, give me a number between 1 and 100,
Yeah.
that's probably not actually a random number in the true, like, mathematical sense of the word. But I can actually give, using the AI SDK, I can define a tool that when I prompt the LLM, I give it a list of tools that it has available to it. So it's going to see, hey, I have this tool that can be used to generate cryptographically secure random numbers, and it can invoke that tool, which will then invoke this code on your end. This handle method that's like right in front of us will actually be called. Uh, but the LLM will like actually decide to call it. I mean, it's pretty wild actually. And so a lot of times, if you look at like model evals, when OpenAI or Anthropic comes out with new models, it will actually have like an eval for tool use of how good it was at
Mm.
using tools.
Yeah.
And the LLMs these days are pretty good at this. So this lets us actually augment the LLM with cool stuff. So, I mean, a real world use case for tools that probably a lot of us are familiar with is if you've ever used Claude Code or Open Code or Cursor, you'll see that it inspects files, like it reads files, it writes files, it runs bash commands. Those are actually tools that the builders of Claude Code and Open Code have built, right? So they have like
Yeah.
a run bash command tool that they have given to the LLM to run bash commands. And so actually the first time when I demonstrated the AI SDK out in San Francisco a few weeks ago, I actually wrote like a little tiny nano version of Claude Code. I think I actually called it nano code, where I gave it like 7 tools. I gave it like a read file tool, a write file tool, a bash tool, and it actually worked. Like you could chat with it, it would update files. You could say, hey, make a new eloquent model and update the routes to like return all the data using the new
Yeah.
model, and it like actually works. So tools let you do all sorts of random stuff, and I think we'll get into in a second. We actually give you some tools built in, but this is how you can like start to integrate the LLM with your system.
Yeah, no, I love that, and that's essentially what Boost is doing in a lot of ways too. Like you mentioned, like Cloud Code, but Boost
Exactly.
has a specific number of tools. That would you say then, Taylor? Tools are a great place to keep the things that your app likely does over and over, or that your LLMs through
Mhm.
your app are doing over and over again.
Yeah, I think so. And some of the tools we give you are some common tools that people expose are like search. So um, go to provider tools. What do we have here?
I think this is the
Is
web
this web
search, web
search, web
fetch.
fetch, and then file search. So like people use tools a lot for this kind of thing. So if I throw like the web search tool or the web fetch tool onto this agent, and these are two tools that are just built into the AI SDK, you don't need to write them yourself. It
Yeah,
will allow the LLM to actually search the web for the latest data or fetch a web page from a given URL. And then with file search, it will allow it to search like vectorized PDFs or other data to find things that otherwise didn't have access to. So if we have maybe uploaded, I don't know, all of our company policy PDFs to a file store, we can now search this and have like a chat agent that can search over this data. And
yeah.
that's data that the LLM otherwise wouldn't have access to.
I love it. Kind of question around these lines. How should we organize our tools? So I guess when you're building out an application with this, what do you think are the thoughts of one, how many tools MPC can or should we use?
Mhm.
And then how should we organize our tools? I guess,
Yeah,
the SDK gives you a way to organize them within this
sure.
tools namespace. But what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I know it's been like kind of a pretty hot topic of discussion around like the amount of tools that you should
Hmm.
expose to an LLM. I would say like, you know, when you shouldn't have like 50, 60, 70 tools probably exposed to the LLM because you get what's called context bloat, where kind of what I was saying, where you have to send all of the messages to the LLM to provide
Yeah.
historical context. You also have to send all of the tool definitions, what they do, and you have to send that on every message as well. So if you have too many tools, you can sort of consume a lot of tokens and a lot of context. Um, I think that really comes into play on some of these local coding agents where you start to plug in like different MCP providers and they have maybe a
Mm.
dozen tools and you've got like maybe five of those and now you've got like 100 tools and it can kind of get pretty out of control pretty fast. I think if you're using the AI SDK to build something in your own application, you probably aren't running into that quite as much where you have like 100 tools. I think that's probably pretty rare. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what the exact number is, but it is a thing you have to watch out for. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I am curious. I actually don't know the answer to this, but I am curious of if there's going to be a way or if there's already one way to be able to say to conditionally
Mm,
load up tools would be
yeah,
very interesting. I know there's probably
yeah.
people
And
working
what's
on that.
cool with the AI SDK is you can do that a little bit in the sense of like you have the agent class, and so whatever you return from that tools method can be sort of like determined at runtime.
Okay.
So maybe one
Yeah, because
user,
it's just an array.
maybe you pass a user into the constructor of the agent, and then you're using that user to say, okay, well, this user has access to this list of tools, and
Interesting.
maybe this other user doesn't. So you can do a
Yeah.
little bit of like dynamic tool registration here. I know people have started working on sort of like other things around tool discovery. So yeah, it's pretty ongoing, I think, evolving topic in the AI world.
Yeah. So that does make sense that uh, uh, a great use case for like a tools array on a particular user would be maybe they're a paid user and would have access to
Right.
specific tools that you might not have for free users, for example.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. For those just joining, again, thanks so much for being here. We have Taylor Otwell talking through the Laravel AI SDK. We'll get to actually building things and like what that actually looks like practically here in a little bit, but I want to give a good overview, bare bones for those watching in on demand of what it is, how we think through different pieces of this because there's so many cool options that you can build with this. Even one app probably would only touch two or three of these. It's really hard to find a singular app that could have all of these things provided. If you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I am checking it as much as possible. I can't promise that we'll get to all those questions, but we're glad to have all of you watching here. Feel free to like and subscribe to help us show more content to you in the future as well. So Taylor, what is structured output? So I've heard of, we
Yeah.
kind of talked about in prompts that you get a text back when you're saying, hey, give me this. What is the difference between that and structured output?
Yeah, so when you prompt an agent sort of by default, you just get sort of free form text back in the response. So very much like you would get from like ChatGPT, it doesn't really have like a defined structure or schema to it. You're just getting back
Mm,
a paragraph or two of text. What structured output lets you do is actually say, okay, when you respond to me, I want you to respond in this structure. And
mm,
I think if you scroll down a little bit, you can see, like in this case, we're saying, give me back a score, and that needs to be an integer, and it's like a required field. So
mm.
when the LLM responds, it's going to give you JSON that matches that schema, which is super convenient because then you can parse that JSON, you like know what to expect in terms of what data is on it, and then you can reliably store it or do whatever you want. If you're just getting back freeform text from LLM, like, how do you parse that? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just arbitrary text, But if you're getting back JSON, you know what to expect. And this is actually powered by a new Laravel component, the JSON schema component, which you can see there in like the type signature. So we actually used this on the MCP package to define JSON schemas for your MCP tools, and it's used here. So we actually wrote this component because we needed it, in the AI SDK, in the MCP package. But it's a really slick little component for defining JSON schemas.
Yeah. I remember the first application, actually the first Laravel application I ever made was an AI application where we didn't have structured output at the time. This was about like 3 years ago. I think it was
Yeah.
GPT-2 or something like that. But I had to hope and pray that the agent responded in the way where I said, okay, use the response, put equals, 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 and then separate it. And then I had to parse it out from that. Structured
Yeah.
output makes that so much easier.
Yeah, it's like I mean, even on Anthropic's models up until recently, like to get it to return structured output, you were literally telling it in the prompt, please respond with this
This
JSON
format.
structure. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's crazy times that we live in now, where we could have it be exactly the way we want it. And so the way
Yeah.
the AI SDK does that makes it extremely easy. A couple of questions that I wanted to do. Someone said for using SDK, we need to purchase multiple model subscriptions like Gemini, Cloud Code. So Cloud Code would probably be like your local one, and then Gemini, if you wanted to use that within the AI SDK, whether that's returning text responses or even image generation, uh, multiple models would have to be added as API keys to the
Yeah.
config locally and in production. But I'm correct, Taylor, where you can use, like, let's say you're building something locally and just want to test it. You can use local models through
Yeah.
Olama. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. We released that pretty quickly after launch. Another thing you can do if you don't want to sign up for multiple model subscriptions is use something like Open Router, where you sign up for Open Router and you have one key, and then you can actually access Anthropic models, OpenAI models, all the models through one API or through
Yeah.
one sort of like paid service. But yeah, you can also just use local models. I actually did that myself the other day, just testing stuff. You can download Olama and then pull in some kind of local model, whichever one you want, and you can just run AI stuff locally.
Yep. So that's Olama, Ollama. And I think actually Open Router, now that you mentioned it, too, I think they also have like of course they have like a paid one where you can pay them and they'll route it to different things. But I think they also have a free where they'll
Yeah,
route it to
I
like
think
free
so too.
providers as well, which is really,
Correct.
really
Yeah.
interesting.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I saw another one. Okay, you mentioned embeddings and vector search. Can it replace LangChain as an example? And can the tools be a RAG replacement?
Yeah, a lot of the tools kind of can be a RAG replacement. As far as it can it replace LangChain, it probably depends on kind of what you're doing with LangChain. But a lot of the ideas behind some of the built-in tools are around sort of like RAG and similar concepts, in the sense of like vectorizing files, searching them, doing similarity search across data using tools, things like that. I think that's like a super common use case for tools in general. So yeah, there's opinions on that kind of built into the AI SDK because it is so common.
Yeah. Um, and then there is, we'll get to that question in a little bit. I will jump back in. What is streaming? So,
Yeah, so streaming is just a really easy way. So instead of calling like the prompt method on an agent, if I call stream, super easy way to send back a stream of text to the front end, so that, like in the same way as when you interact with chats online, how the text sort of like streams in line by line as it's available, the stream method in the AI SDK makes that super easy. So this uses HTTP server sent events called SSE for streaming text back as it's available. And then in this example, you can see we're using this kind of then method. We can actually do something once it's all been streamed. If there's some sort of like either follow up action we want to do or something, I don't know, some arbitrary code we want to run after the stream is complete, we can do that here.
Hmm.
But then on the front end in our JavaScript or using Livewire or something, we can actually consume that stream to like show text as it is available, so that you don't have to wait for the entire response to be generated before you see anything.
Yeah, that is a really nice part of it being so succinctly tied in with the front end. I like that. For example, within Vue and React, we have the use stream hook, but then
Right.
Livewire has the wire stream to be able to take all of this and make it look like you would expect within ChatGPT, where it's kind of streaming line by line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
what about async? This is interesting to me because
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of cool things about it, but I'm not quite sure how it actually works behind the scenes.
Yeah, so this is another example of how the AI SDK is sort of like leaning into a lot of Laravel's full stack, batteries included opinions, where
Hmm.
instead of calling prompt or stream, in this case, we're calling queue, where we're actually basically queuing a prompt. So we're saying, hey, we want to
Okay.
call the LLM with this prompt, but we want to do that in a queue job in the background because we don't necessarily need or want to wait for the response right now.
Hmm.
We just need to queue this to happen in the background, and then we'll do something with the response later. So when you call this queue method, it's actually going to create a background job on your Laravel queue to respond to this prompt. And then the then and the catch callbacks will be invoked when the response is ready or if something goes wrong, respectively.
Yeah.
So once we get the response, we can store it in a database or send an email or whatever we want to do with that response. Or if something goes wrong, we can handle that as well in the catch callback. But basically, this would be used where the user submits something that we want to analyze with AI, but
Hmm.
we don't really want the user to have to sit and wait for it to be done right then.
Yep.
So we want to return a response to the user like, hey, we're processing this. We'll let you know when it's ready or whatever. And then that happens really quickly, right? Basically instantaneously. And in the background, this job is running. And then we'll do something. We'll notify the user maybe when it's ready or when it's done or whatever. This makes it super simple to do that.
Yeah. So I would say, like, off the top of my head, it seems like a good use case for this would be maybe transcribing a 100 MB, 200 MB audio
Yeah,
upload, where you don't want them to wait for a full request
exactly.
until they get the response for that. That's awesome. I love that. A question on the async stuff from Len: is the async stuff non-blocking? Does it use the React PHP PSR 18 browser?
Yeah, this async stuff is more like queue related. So it doesn't really have anything to do with like async in the sense of like concurrency or like
Hmm.
Go coroutines or anything like that. It's more about just like putting something on your background queue and then doing something with it later.
Yeah. I think I saw another question. Yes, the SDK is compatible with the Olama API. I would assume yes as well, correct?
Yeah,
Not
I,
just
I think
local
so.
Olama.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can even there's a new I think we just documented this the other day, maybe 2 days ago. There's a in your config file, you can actually override the base URL for any provider. So you can actually use any AI provider that is like OpenAI compatible or Olama compatible just by overriding that base URL.
Yeah. Question here that we kind of glossed over here at the top. But I'm curious to hear how this was kind of built, Taylor, and then also what your thoughts are in terms of. I know that there's also a use cheapest model trait and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So in terms of automatic failover,
Yeah.
and then how does all that work behind the scenes?
Yeah. So, yeah, yes, you can do this. And it pretty much works how this person is asking, where you pass multiple providers and models to the prompt method or either, or specify them in the provider attribute on the agent itself, where if one provider is either overloaded or you are rate limited on that provider, it will actually just fall back to the next provider in the list that you give it. So maybe you try Anthropic first. If Anthropic is overloaded or you're just rate limited on Anthropic, it will fall back to OpenAI, for example. We do that by checking like the response codes from the AI providers that we get back, so we can see like, oh, they're overloaded, or we get like I think it's like a 429 HTTP code if you're rate limited or something like that. And then we can fall back to the next provider, and we actually raise an event that you can listen for to know that you had a failover. And we're working on bringing a lot of this event visibility into Nightwatch so that you're going to be able to see, like how much tokens am I using on which providers and
Mm.
how long are my tool calls taking and things like that. Anyway, so that's kind of like model failover. And then you mentioned kind of like some of the attributes you can put on agents, like use cheapest model, use smartest model. I kind of wanted to have this nice way to just like annotate an agent with use cheapest model, for example. And sometimes you have tasks like it's basic text summarization or something like that, where you don't need like Anthropic Opus 4.6 for that, right? It's like
Yeah.
too
Not
expensive, it's
spending
slower.
$100. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're just trying to summarize like a paragraph of text into one sentence, for example, you can just use like haiku. So the benefit of putting use cheapest model on the agent is like, let's say tomorrow a new cheapest model comes out. You
Mm.
don't really have to go look, okay, like what is that model? Let me copy the ID for it, like paste it into my code. If you're just like use cheapest model and you just like compose or update to get the latest AI SDK, you're just like always on the
Yeah.
latest, cheapest, or smartest model. So this is kind of nice. You don't really have to update your code if you know that this agent is doing something that's not very like, doesn't require a lot of intelligence.
Yeah. No, I love that. Because it's one of those things similar to what you had mentioned at the beginning, where you having the one package then makes it easier and more eloquent in the sense of you're not having to you have those opinions already formed for you when it comes to
Right.
cheapest, when it comes to smartest, even when it comes to
Yeah.
automatic failover for those are things that you probably mostly want when you're building a full stack application. You just don't want to do it yourself in a lot of ways.
Yeah, totally.
Lastly, what about attachments? This is an interesting one.
Yes. Yeah. So attachments kind of come up in a few places throughout the AI SDK. So in this example, we're using it when prompting and during text generation. So, maybe we're giving it, I think in some of my demos, I've given it like a CSV of
Mm,
sales leads, or maybe you're giving it a PDF of a transcript and you're saying, analyze this document or parse it or do something with it. So we just make it super easy to give attachments in various places. So you can do it here with text. We also actually let you do it when you're generating images. So you could give it, you could prompt the model, hey, here's an image and I want to make it like cartoon style or like a painting, or I want to change something about it, like basically remix an existing image. You can also use attachments for that as well. So yeah, just super easy to attach and upload files and kind of interact with them. Yeah, here's this image example. Yeah, or maybe you're asking what's in the image, so I can give it
yeah,
an image and I can combine that even with like structured output to like analyze images and generate structured output that I can do something with.
I love that. I love that. Quick question. I'm gonna close out this screen or stop sharing my screen real quick, just so we can answer this question. I'm gonna pull up a demo that I built so we can walk through it in a practical sense before and then maybe if we still have some time, we can build something from scratch because I'm curious to see
Mhm.
how Claude Code also works with the AI SDK and to getting to show everyone there. But question says, now that we have the Laravel SDK, what's next? Laravel's focus on AS is exciting. I think it's the right step forward. Are there any future plans? So I guess what you kind of
Yeah,
mentioned the whole remembering agent being one of your things that you're focusing on. What do you think
yeah,
is after?
right. I've actually got a list of things that I'm working on, sort of like post beta and even after the stable release. So yeah, I've got a list of features I want to keep working on for sort of the conversation storage, context retrieval, all of that stuff. I mean, it's stuff like some basic stuff like pruning of the historical conversations or compaction of the history and sort of like summaries and snapshots and things like that. There's some stuff around tools and sort of agent loops that I want to look at. So like human tool approval is a good one. So like say you want the LLM to be able to invoke like a refund customer tool, but it needs human approval if the refund amount is greater than $200.
Mhm.
So like stuff like that. It's kind of these more advanced, complicated tool use cases. Um, and then there's other agent stuff like agent loops. More customization of when the agent actually stops doing things. This is sort of gets into like some of the you've seen people have these like so-called Ralph Wiggum loops of where you can you have like infinite loops of agents doing things. So a lot of like agent loop configuration and stuff like that. I also want to build like a cool artisan command like artisan agent chat. So where like if you have an agent and you just want to like chat with it, maybe to see how it's behaving or what it's doing, I can
Ooh,
just come into the command line and do agent chat. And then I can just like pick an agent from a list using Laravel prompts and then just chat with it and see like, okay, is it behaving like how I would expect,
yeah.
and almost like the DD of, like agent debugging in a
The
way.
AI DD in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. Now, that'd be
Yeah,
that'd
pretty
be really
much.
interesting. I almost
And
imagine then you could have its own agent MCP where your Claude code or LLM, whatever, is kind of can interact with the agent,
yeah.
talk to each other.
Yeah. And then there's already a bunch of PRs open from the community. And one of the
Yeah.
ones I think that is most requested or most on everyone's minds is so-called like sub agents. And one easy way to think about this is almost like the ability to expose another agent as a tool from another agent. So like imagine I have,
Mhm.
one primary agent and in its tools method, maybe I don't only return tools, I can also return other agents. So it can actually call on, okay, you are sort of like an orchestrator agent and you can call on maybe this planning agent or this research agent or this other type of agent that is more specialized to do things. There's actually a PR open for that right now that I need to review. Hopefully I get it reviewed today. And but at least can kind of get out that sub agent behavior this week. But a lot of it will be driven by the community. I think there's like dozens of pull requests already out there, and that's kind of how it always goes in the open source world. Like I'm driving. I have one hand on the wheel, but the community also has a hand on the wheel, and we're hopefully getting to a good destination.
Yeah, co-piloting together
Yeah,
to
exactly.
get to
Yeah.
a great place. That there, kind of similar. You kind of answered a couple questions in the chat of sense of can you call an agent from another agent? Doesn't sound like it's possible right
Yeah, that's
now, but that
coming.
is something that's coming
Yeah.
in terms of agent orchestration and everything like
Mhm.
that. Again, thanks so much for everyone being in the chat. I wanted to talk. I wanted to walk through a demo that I actually built, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, Taylor, on what could be added to this. But then we can jump in and maybe build something from scratch as
Mhm.
well. But thanks so much, everyone, for joining. If you're just joining, or maybe you've been here the last 10, 15 minutes, haven't heard me do this spiel yet, we are with Taylor talking about the AI SDK that was just released last Thursday, Friday, Thursday. And so it's only been out for 4 days. And so it's been crazy to be able to see how many people are already building with it, how many, like Taylor said, how many new PRs have already been added, but just walking through the possibilities of it, as well as just talking through why it was built in the first place. So if you're here, let us know you're here. If you have any questions, we'll try to get to them as best as possible. But yeah, I wanted to show this little demo that I built. It's actually live right now. I'm not going to tell everyone the URL just because I don't want to crash while we're on stream, but I'll share it at the end so that you can have it as well as a GitHub repo, and I'll put it in the description if you're watching this in review. But this is a little. I wanted to try to find a way to build using almost everything or almost as much of the AI SDK as possible.
Yeah.
Um, and the premise for this was I always save a lot of links that I always forget what those links are. Bookmarks have never worked for me. Even most AI tools have never worked for me because it only saves like the link and maybe meta description, doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily save any of my thoughts on it or anything like that. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to build a
Mhm.
thing using the AI SDK that either takes a file that I upload, maybe a screenshot, a document, or a URL, and then have it upload to this vector storage. So we're actually using the vector storage
Mhm.
part of the AI SDK to auto chunk that embed. And this is one cool thing that I actually didn't know. I'm curious to get your thoughts on like what's the difference between storing something in vector using OpenAI's vector storage
Mhm.
versus putting this in Postgres, PG
Yeah.
vectors.
Yeah. This kind of came up at Larrykonn India. I mean, they are The end goal is really similar, I would
Hmm.
say, in the sense of like we want to store embeddings about things and then search them or query them. What is cool, I mean, I guess let's start with like the PG vector stuff. So like in the AI SDK docs, we show you how to take a string of text and generate embeddings for it. And then you can put that in a vector column in a Postgres database,
Yep.
as long as it has the PG vector extension, which most local Postgres things do, like the herd version, and then Laravel Clouds, Postgres has it. And then you can run queries on that to find things that are similar to your query. So, like to go back to our Mexican food example, which we both like if I
Yep.
stored like, um, you know, restaurants that have great cheese dip, and then I search for good appetizers, those things are semantically similar, even though they don't actually have the same words contained within them. There are similar ideas. And so that's the purpose of semantic search, is to be able to pull back things that are related. So you can actually store those embeddings in your own Postgres database, or you can actually upload files or data to OpenAI or Gemini, and they will vectorize and store them for you. So it's just sort of like one of the convenient things about storing them on OpenAI or Gemini is you can just hand them a PDF. They will extract all of the text and vectorize it for you out
Hmm.
of the PDF and all of that. Like doing that all locally, you're going to have to pull the text out of the PDF. You're going to have to vectorize it. You're going to have to store it. So it is kind of convenient to just be able to like throw files at OpenAI and Gemini and say, hey, like vectorize these for me. I don't want to even have to think about it.
Yeah.
It's just, it's two different ways of doing similar things.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And so, yeah, this works in the sense of there's a couple cool things I really love is how easy it is to take an attachment, let's say an image, and grab specific things out of this using an AI agent to say, okay, I have this image. Now I just want like I save a lot of screenshots either on my phone or just like I'm grabbing things, and usually I have like a directory on my device. So I wanted a place to be able to save all of those, but then also be able to query them in later things. So again, the goal of this is one, to kind of scratch my own itch and build with the AI SDK, but then two, be able to show as much as possible off of the AI SDK. So I wanted to grab, we'll go to Laravel News. I want to just find like a quick little link that I might be able to salve. So let's go ahead and maybe we'll see here, like OpenAI releases GPT 5.3 codex. I'm going to grab this link and go back to my URL here. And if I just paste this in, I can add a specific comment about this URL, or I can just capture this. And this is one of those async things that's happening then on in the background, where I can still go to different links, but it's still being stored and retrieved in the background. It looks like because it's JavaScript front end, this failed. So here we're going to upload a screenshot instead. I'm going to go back to that link. I'm just going to upload. We'll zoom out here, and I'm just going to paste a quick screenshot just of this. There we go. We'll go back to here. I'm going to paste this in and upload and analyze. So what it should be doing within the AI SDK is it's going to grab the process using the vision to say, hey, let's describe what is actually happening in this image, and not even just transcribing it. But the cool thing about that vision SDK is like you get additional aspects. You can send a specific prompt in with vision to say, okay, I actually want these particular things. If we're building a research library, I want to know what's pertinent to this. You can see here, it says it's a detailed description of the image, screenshots, top header, large rectangular card with rounded corners and a soft drop shadow, all the neat things that you might want from an image. It's a lot more than I actually thought it would be from just one simple image. But the neat part with this is kind of everything that's happening in the background. Is a couple people mentioned, what would you recommend for front end things? Some people said polling versus broadcasting. What are your thoughts, Taylor? And I'll say what I did in this particular demo.
Oh man. There
Or
is
when to use
something
which would be a good question, I guess.
there is something just like really nice about, for simple stuff, just throwing like a wire pull on a div
Yeah.
and it just like works. Um, so if
Don't
you
have to
don't
do anything
have
else.
Yeah, if you don't have tons of users, like, maybe it's just a tool for yourself, even,
Yeah.
like you're the only user, which I think in the age of AI, we're seeing more sort of just like personal software, right? Of just like tools people are creating for themselves that are really intended just for them. I think throwing like some polling, or especially with Livewire, makes it so easy with wire polling. I guess Inertia has polling as well now, since Inertia 2. I think that's nice. But if you're in like more of a production use case, like let's say like Laravel Forge or Laravel Cloud's dashboard, where there's hundreds of users in there at a time, wire polling can be a little bit more inefficient since you're kind of like continually hitting that back end, whether there's data ready or not. Broadcasting kind of gives you more of like a push mechanism to where you're just pushing data as needed. So it's a lot more efficient.
Yeah. Yeah, in this particular demo, I did use broadcasting with the use like with reverb, and then like the use echo hooks to watch for that. So that way, when we're when we're grabbing something from the web, or we're uploading a screenshot, for example, if I go into here and I just say something like, I don't know, we'll just grab this from the AI SDK, and if I
Mhm.
go into and actually paste it, it's happening behind the scenes, yes, but once it finishes, you'll see that happen live. So this is one of the things that, of course, like Taylor said, you could use this with wire pull, where it's just constantly pinging the server every 5 seconds or whatever, and it will update automatically. But this is using specifically for this demo. It's using the vector storage to store all of this once it does read it from the vision, and then we're getting a structured output so that when we chat with it, and you can see that kind of popped up right there, now we can chat and have all of those things. And if I pop over to this chat, this is where we have a couple additional features that we kind of already walked through with the AI SDK. We have conversational to say, hey, here's like remembering those particular agents. But then we also have streaming set up, as well as file search and web search. These are the two tools that me personally, Taylor, those were like incredibly easy, and I loved
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
them to not have to. I've built a couple AI tools where I'm relying on maybe web search within PHP, for example, instead
Hmm.
of giving AIs the tools to be able to use it themselves.
Yeah.
I'm curious of like, what were we kind of talked about in the tools, but what was your thoughts on those three tools: the file search, web search, and is it image search?
File
What's the third
search,
one?
web search, and web fetch are
Web
the
fetch. There you go.
three built in. Well, I guess there's also a similarity search, which we haven't really got into. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to give people, I think these are just like incredibly common use cases. Web search and web fetch, of course, used to sort of overcome the training knowledge cutoff for the LLMs to where we can actually go out and fetch relevant data. I actually use this type of functionality in LLMs a lot when I'm maintaining the Laravel docs, and or when I'm writing the docs for a new framework feature. So one thing I will do is go into the docs, fire up Claude Code, and say, "Hey, can you write docs for this PR?" And I will like paste in the PR URL on GitHub, and it works like incredibly well, actually. So it's super convenient to be able to give the AI the ability to fetch web pages in a variety of
Mm.
scenarios.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. I'm just gonna ask you a question about let's see. Maybe we'll say what was that latest model from OpenAI? We should see it search the specific things that it already has pertain to my local user, and we should see those tool callings actually be made here. So it's searching the knowledge base, and then it found, the OpenAI model mentioned is GPT 5.3 codex in our saved notes. So this is a use case of particular conversational API that we kind of talked about, in the sense of it's remembering the things. If I was to ask without having that context of something like uh, what
And you even
news
had
article was that?
you even had the tool call thing like show up too. That's pretty fancy.
That was a fun. I didn't know that was possible. Because
Yeah,
I've only ever worked with chat where it was just returning text. So returning
yeah.
when it returns, and I could be wrong, or misremembering, but I think when you return the structured output,
Hmm.
it Open AI specifically, which is what the provider I'm using with gives says when it's calling particular tools as a JSON.
Right.
So it's really easy to
Yeah.
parse that within UStream. Is that correct?
Yeah. When you stream stuff, you get sort of like tool call start, tool call end. You get like, these various events for when tools are being used.
Yeah. I'm curious. I actually haven't tested if I can search on the web then of like what link is that associated to on the web. I think I marked this down so it doesn't actually go on call it, but I'm just curious
Oh
now
yeah.
if that does it. A couple of questions. Some people said I didn't. So there it is, using a web search
Oh yeah,
tool.
that's searching.
Okay, a blog post.
It
We'll
found
call
it
that.
found something, yeah.
Yeah, we'll call that good. OpenAI blog post, which is probably what Laravel News is referencing. So
Yeah.
we're good there. Some people said I made it easy to guess the URL. Yeah, I'm sorry. I did not scale. I think I'm using a very small Laravel cloud server for this. So if it crashes, that's not Laravel Cloud's fault. That's my fault for not scaling it up.
What did you use to build this, Josh? Is this a Claude Code special, or is this Cursor? What is this, or is
This
this all
is
handwritten?
mostly Claude code with
Yeah.
some handwritten stuff for the chat. So I did figure out quickly what stuff Claude code doesn't seem to do a great job with,
Mhm.
and the use stream stuff of it took me a while to figure out that it returns
Yeah.
the JSON for structure for streaming, and being
Mhm.
able to kind of push that back and forth. It was trying to do some whenever Claude Codes goes out and tries to build like 5 different files, and I'm like, no, this should probably just be like one option in the Laravel AI because I know it's a
Yeah.
lot cleaner than that. That's when I start having some second guesses. So most of this was built within Claude Code with me referencing by hand each particular AI capability and being able to prompt to saying, hey, I know that the AI SDK can do this. Let's
Mhm.
make it do that.
Right.
Someone has said, in an AI first future, do you see Laravel becoming an orchestrator of AI agents rather than just an HTTP framework? I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see that. If there's one thing I've learned in like the 15 years of maintaining Laravel is that people will use it for all kinds of things I didn't expect. So, um, yeah, I mean, like I think people building AI agents and like AI features is going to be the thing for a long time, for the foreseeable future. So, I think it's good for Laravel to sort of have this good first party option there.
I love it. Why don't I fire up um, maybe a Claude code instance, and we can create a Laravel application from scratch. And maybe Taylor, I'll have you talk through with me of how you might maybe help start from scratch, and I'd be curious to see your thoughts on what are the things you're kind of looking for to make sure everything is working the way. What kind of revisions you look at.
Mm.
The idea that I have, and we can maybe kickstart this a little bit more. The idea that I have, mostly because I have a fallback to show what I built right before this, just in case things don't work out. But the idea that I have is we maybe upload some markdown files about us or about the user as an individual. And then we
Mhm.
can use 11 Labs API as a voice to be able to talk to it, transcribe our voice, get an answer, and then have it talk back to us.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
So let me go ahead and share my screen again real quick. For those still in the chat with us, what's your favorite drink of choice? Maybe while you're coding. I know Taylor just took a swig of a Coke Zero. So who else is Coke Zero fans, or what else is your particular drink of choice? How many Coke Zeros have you consumed so far today, Taylor?
I think like 3.
Okay,
I
that's
drink
not.
I drink a lot of Coke Zero, to be honest.
I saw some research on it that like everyone talks about, like, oh, Diet Cokes are still bad for you and Coke Zeros are still bad for you and all this. But
Yeah.
then some research said you had to have, I think,
It's like
somewhere
an
around
insane amount.
40, yeah, 40 or
Yeah, it's an
50
insane
something
amount.
Coke Zeros before it even before you even get to the required limit, which is like 1,000% lower
Yeah.
than what the actual limit is, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
um, Taylor, what IDE do you use? I'll say that before we jump into some
I'm
of these
still
examples.
using a lot of Sublime Text. I'm kind of interested to see where like the IDE
Hmm.
space goes, like as a concept. I think you even see this with Cursor, right? With them like kind of leaning more into their agent mode as like the default view, even for booting up the IDE. And it's like, previously when we were like hand writing so much code, I remember when I was first starting in my like career using Visual Studio to write .NET, and the IDE was just so incredibly important in terms of like the intelligence it gave you and the shortcuts, and it was kind of built for like handwriting code productively, right?
Yeah.
And now as we move into a future where like handwriting code to some extent starts to feel painful, just as a concept of like, why would you handwrite all of the code? I'm curious to see like how the IDE arena
Hmm.
sort of like evolves with like, VS Code and PHP Storm, and Sublime Text is almost more of an editor than an IDE, but I'm still using Sublime Text paired with Claude Code and Open Code.
I love it. I'm similar, not with Sublime, but I'm using Zed editor
Yeah.
with paired with Claude Code and Open Code, mostly because I kind of like when I'm writing handwritten stuff, I don't want like even autocomplete. Maybe a little bit of autocomplete I'm okay with.
Yeah.
But most
I'm
of the
kind
time
of
I
the
like,
same way.
yeah,
I
I
find
like
Zed and Sublime like Zed is the closest thing to Sublime that like I've ever
really.
used.
Okay.
That's not Sublime. I find them so
Yeah.
similar.
I never used Sublime. I think I did when I was first writing HTML files, but I didn't learn it enough to when it stuck. So I was
Mm,
using VS Code for the longest time.
yeah.
Um, People in the chat, water. We got Coke Zero, a lot of water.
Water.
So
That's
a lot of
boring.
Coke. Water for code. Pepsi Zero. I'm a villain. Yeah, I
It's
don't
not
know if
bad.
we really. I
I sometimes
Diet
I'm at like
Pepsi or Pepsi Zero.
I don't know if I've even had Diet Pepsi. I think I've only had Pepsi Zero. But
Okay.
sometimes you're just in a Pepsi establishment, right? And you just like don't
Yeah,
have a choice because it's like a Pepsi household. So I've definitely had it.
that is true. I do like Dr. Pepper Zero. That is like
Yeah, that is good. I agree with
I
that. That's good.
that is one of my specialties. We got Tim Hortons steep tea, some lemon iced tea. I'm thrilled at how many Coke Zeros there are in the chat. I love that.
Yeah. Man, I
Um,
actually went to the store this morning after the kids went to school because I was out of Coke Zero. And so I pull into the parking spot, and like as I'm getting out, there's this lady loading her car next to me, and she is loading that car with Coke Zero. And I'm like,
oh man,
this is one of my people right
full size
I'm,
cans too.
yeah, they were actually bottles. They were like big
Oh,
plastic
okay.
bottles of Coke Zero. I almost like said something, but I figured she'd just be weirded out. Why do you
Yeah,
care about my Coke Zero?
I'm curious if you've ever had the thought of putting Coke Zero, maybe like getting a whole bunch of 2 liters, putting it on tap and doing that, or
Oh,
if you
that'd be
just like
great.
can all the way.
I mean, I like the can, but I mean, some places have like a really good tap. Like to me, McDonald's, they have like some kind of
Okay.
magic tap where it's
Mm.
just like the soda comes out so much better than it does other places. But
Oh yeah.
yeah. But
Next.
to me, actually, the peak is like glass bottle Coke Zero, which is not easy to find, to be
Okay.
honest. But they do have it, and I've found it occasionally, more in Europe actually than in the United States. But a glass bottle Coke Zero that really hits different.
I maybe we'll get it have this happen at this year's Larrykonn. By the way, Larrykonn US tickets are out live
Yeah,
right now. We're going to Boston this year, Larrykonn.us. But
yeah, it's
I
gonna be
pitched
awesome.
this that last Larrykonn. Maybe we'll have it happen this one. I want to do. Have you ever done like those blind tasting things? But we'll do
Oh, that'd be
Taylor
good. We should do
blind
that.
tasting Coke Zero behind like glass can. McDonald's Coke Zero or McDonald's Diet Coke, and have you figure it out
Yeah, that'd
blind
be
taste.
fun actually.
So we'll put it now that it's in the atmosphere. We'll put it out there. Let's do Laravel new.
Okay.
I'm gonna call this the Larvis agent, like Laravel Jarvis.
Okay.
And we'll go ahead and we'll make this React just for simplicity. We'll go no authentication scaffolding. pest. How do you like to do Laravel new, Taylor? Like, what's your
I was
do you
just
do
thinking
the
we
dash everything or?
I was just thinking we need a Laravel new dash dash Taylor that just like it's all my own opinions.
Ooh, yeah,
Um,
that'd be
so
awesome.
usually, oh man, this is a good one. I mean, it kind of depends on what I'm doing. I do like the blank starter kits like you picked here with like just no authentication scaffolding for stuff like this. Um, and then I usually just use the defaults like pest or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I didn't know if you were a dash React and then dash because you can put all of that into one. I
Yeah, I don't
usually
really
just
do
do.
that. Yeah, I never do that.
Yeah. Do you do the empty prompt then? In terms of like the Laravel new and not even any name after?
I usually do specify a name, so I'll do like Laravel space news space somethings. Like I actually forgot that you can actually leave off the app name, I guess, and it will
Yep.
just ask you. Okay, I
Yeah.
kind of forgot about that. So I usually provide the app name.
Yep. I provide the app name as well. But yeah, one of the things that I've learned with when I'm scaffolding something out with LLMs like Claude Code, for example, is uh, the blank no dashboard and no authentication almost is
Mhm.
easier because otherwise it tries to confine it into the dashboard sometimes and from a
Yeah,
UI standpoint. And it
yeah,
looks a
yeah, yeah,
little, then I just have it, I usually do manually like cutting that out and clearing it up. So I
hmm
like the blank side.
yeah.
Um, we will, I'm not going to use the herd MCP. I'm going to use Claude Code. Um, and then I'm curious, Taylor, what are the ways if you like, let's say you're scaffolding something out with LLM, you're not jumping too much into the code to start until you get to a certain point, whatever that
Mhm.
might look like. Do you install packages first? Do you do any kind of like PHP artisan model creates, or what's your way of going about this?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes I will put a little bit of like scaffolding in place first, and I did this as well as I was even just building the AI SDK, where I would actually just scaffold out a few, like sometimes even empty classes of like, hey, here's kind of like the structure of how I want things to look. So maybe I define like an interface or a few classes just to kind of like put some kind of like rails in place, as far
Hmm.
as, okay, here's kind of the shape of what we want this app to look like. And then let the model kind of like, paint between the lines from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of go back and forth myself. Most of the time I install all the packages that I want
Yeah.
and set all the packages up first and then and usually then like any kind of like maybe tables, migrations that I know I specifically want and then I jump
Mm-hmm.
in. But yeah, I found
Yeah.
that
Kind
then
of
it
similar
then
that way.
it feels like I am setting the course, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Um, let's go ahead and install the Laravel AI SDK and then we we I believe we publish
Yeah.
um I always forget the
Yeah.
publish and then we
Vendor.
can search for it.
Yep.
Tags AI.
Yeah. Service provider.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. That works. Yeah. There you go.
that's just the
You got it.
config. Yeah. So that should be all we
Yeah.
actually
That's all
need
you
to
need.
publish the let's go into the docs. We actually need to publish the
You need the
um
migrations.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and do that as well. Perfect. I'm going to hide my screen and input some environment variables because that's usually what I would do next. So I'm going to do this mostly I'm going to delete them anyways right after this, but just in case so I don't pull those up anywhere. Um, so we're going to use 11 labs and we're going to use probably Open AI SDK because it makes it a little bit simpler. I'm going to copy this. Perfect. All right. And so, Taylor, you said that you had used Claude Code mostly and like Open Code. Do you do like the dangerously
Pretty much. Yeah.
get permissions all the time, or do you watch
Yeah.
it?
Pretty much. Um, nah, I pretty much do this, to be honest.
Yeah. Here's a quick tip that I actually didn't know until like the last couple of weeks for those who do use Claude Code.
Mm,
If you go to and bypass or dangerously skip permissions, you can still do the Shift tab to go into plan mode, for example,
mm, mhm.
without going back and you can go back into bypass permissions on. I do that mostly because I always like to do plan mode,
Yeah,
just to get things up and running.
yeah, I do too, especially for bigger features.
So I'm going to do PHP artisan migrate, and we'll make sure I'm on the right one. Um, Perfect. And so we're going to, in Claude Code, we are going to build an application where we can upload or have some local markdown files. And using the Laravel AI SDK, we are going to take those markdown files and generate and have an assistant be able to answer questions using the voice mode. So when we talk to the assistant in an extremely simple UI, they can transcribe our voice with voice to text from AI SDK, pass that to an agent to be able to generate an answer based on our markdown files, and then generates a response using the voice from AI SDK. So I'm
Really quick,
curious,
what
Taylor.
what was the difference between the Larvis directory and the Larvis agent directory?
um, oh, are we in Larvis? Oh,
Yeah, we're in Larvis.
this is the one that
Copy that.
I already did. So,
Yeah, cancel that.
we'll cancel that one out. We'll go to Larvis agent. There we go. Thank you. I already did this mostly because I wanted something to show at the end if we either didn't have enough time
Yeah.
or if anything did. So, but it's a good good for those. I'm curious then for those in the chat who are using LLMs, what is a thing, maybe one or two things that you do or that you've found that have been helpful, maybe with building in Laravel, or something that you always like to do, even if you are having AI do most of the work? Like, what's something that you either look at, something that you make sure you review? Taylor, when it comes to like reviewing the work or testing it out, what's your first thing, maybe like after you run a prompt, even plan mode? What's the first thing that
Mhm.
you like go to double check in the code?
I kind of pull up I pull up the whole like diff in the GitHub desktop app,
Okay.
actually. And that way it's just like this really easy visualization of every file that changed. And I can really quickly just kind of scan through them and see what's going on. And then I will usually clean up a variety of things. It might be like really nitpicky things like method order or where it put a method in the class. I kind of like organize methods logically or in a certain way that I like. Um, I haven't really reliably been able to automate that with like a with an AI guidelines or anything. And then I'll just kind of continue the conversation with the AI. You know, like maybe sometimes it duplicated something, or I was like, hey, you could actually have a more general abstraction around this and like make this file and extract this here and then
Mm,
use it both places. And
yeah.
I'll kind of coach it along, or try different things. But yeah, that's kind of how I approach it. I don't use a lot of like really, let's call them like fancy AI workflows in the sense of
Mm,
like I usually have like one or two Claude Code tabs open. I'm kind of working on a couple, maybe one or two things at most, kind of specifically, at a time. You know, I haven't really dug too far into like I've got, 10 different Claude codes churning on
yeah.
10 parallelized tasks on the same code base without them like running into each other. And I haven't really experienced that or like found a need for that. But I'm a pretty simple guy, I guess, when it comes to the AI usage and how I use it.
Awesome. So then, have you jumped into the OpenClaw stuff yet? So for those who don't know, you run OpenClaw and Forge right now. It's super
Yeah.
simple to get it set up. Have you dumped
Yeah.
into it, Taylor? Or no?
I've only like scratched the surface of it. You know, I have got an open claw like up and running when I was playing with the Forge stuff. I can't say that I'm like super deep into it, like automating my entire life, but I
Yeah.
do love the concept. I think like I actually wrote my own Telegram chatbot for AI along like year or two ago, just because I find like Telegram or like WhatsApp like this super convenient sort of just like
Mm.
interface for talking to AI on the go. Mine was just a simple chatbot. It had no other like functionality that OpenClaw has, but I think it's a really cool project. You know, I'm curious like how it evolves and where it goes from here, but pretty crazy how it's like, you know, got everyone buying Mac minis all over the place.
Awesome. We're doing some plan mode. So where should the markdown files live? Let's go resources docs. I'm curious, Taylor, you get your thoughts on like if you're
Yeah,
doing
I think
anything
that makes sense.
locally, like would you do
Uh,
storage app? Seems like AI loves storage app. I don't know what it is about that.
so are these are files that is this files that the user is going to upload?
Maybe either user or if this was just meant to be deployed locally. Like let's say you
Okay.
bring
If
this
it's just going to
down.
be deployed locally, I think I would go resources docs. I think that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Direct attachments. We'll probably do that instead of a filed
Yeah.
search. Let's do that. And then we can text to speech. Let's do 11 labs. And we'll do a single session. So super simple, super generic. I forgot to publish the skills for the AI SDK. So before it jumps into actually implementing this, I'm gonna cancel out and do that. We have some questions in the chat. If you're still here, thank you so much for being here. Taylor's been awesome to be able to answer some questions, and now we're just having some fun building with it as well. But some great questions specifically for Taylor about AI. I had a feeling Taylor didn't like AI much. What made him change his mind? What was the turning point?
I never have actually been anti AI or against AI. I think you know, when coding agents and AI kind of first got started, there was this big um wave of like vibe coding as a concept, right? It sort of like dominated the discourse for, you know, a chunk of 2025 was
Mm,
this concept of vibe coding where you're like not even reviewing the code. And I think I don't relate a lot or maybe don't um, for like production work, let's say, or for like real work that I'm going to like give to customers. I don't relate to that way of coding as much. I think that's a fun way of coding for like, you know, personal projects that are sort of low stakes and you actually don't care about the code quality. But, you know, what we've seen is just like over time, as the models get better, I think like the quality of the code has gotten so much better. And I'm actually curious if you've seen like any I know Opus 4.6 just been out not even, I guess, a week yet. Are
yeah.
you seeing like any big improvements from like Opus 4.5, or has it not been long enough to really even judge?
Yeah, I don't think I have seen too many big improvements in the sense of like I haven't used the new codex as much. I
Mm,
think the biggest improvements that I've seen from both of those, just in my gut reaction and feel, has been more in like the thinking through something before doing it. I feel like
yeah.
I'm telling it no, that was wrong. Let's think about this. Let's do it this way instead. Much less.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just because it's using skills better, it's using context
Mm.
better, or it's just smarter. It's always hard to tell in that aspect.
You know what? I'm sort of like, I'm curious to see where AI coding goes in the sense of like, I've seen DAX and Open Code kind of say similar things where like, I almost feel like even if the models only got marginally better from where they are now at writing code, if they got like let's say they got like 10% better, but they got 10x faster at like actually doing it, I actually think the speed for me is like what I crave even more than like more intelligence at this point. You know what
Mm,
I mean? Like I
yeah,
find that for most tasks that I'm asking them to do, they're intelligent enough to do because I don't I'm not doing rocket science, right? I'm like building
yeah.
web apps and pulling stuff from a database and it's sort of like CRUD interfaces. But if they could do it like 10x faster, like for me, that would be like such an even bigger unlock, I feel like, than like, you know, like here we've been waiting for 6 minutes, but what if it only took it like 15 seconds to do all of this? Like that would be incredible,
Yep.
and hopefully we get
Exactly.
there over the next few years.
I'm going to run boost install again. So when we scaffolded out Laravel new, we installed boost, we ran it. But if we run it again, because we installed Laravel AI SDK, it's going to actually ask for us right here to do these third-party AI guidelines, which I'm going to enter and make sure that our code here, because we're clearing context and bypassing permissions, it should use the skill now that has access to it as well. But it might not at the same time. I'm always curious if I think we have to close out of it and then open it back up again for new skills. We have some people in the chat who probably know a little bit more about me in that particular aspect. Question about when you were creating the AI SDK, what did you want? Did you want to try and create a competitor link graph and that suite of code, or I guess your thoughts
I
there?
sort of approach things pretty fresh. I'm not really like a heavy user of LangGraph or LangChain, like or anything like that. And I've approached a lot of things in Laravel this way, for better or worse, to be honest, over the years, where I just sort of like come at the problem with no really preset opinions or like baggage or like kind of historical experience around it even, and just sort of look at it all fresh and based on my own like opinions and use cases, trying to build something that I think is interesting. And I try to put like, when I build a new package like the AI SDK or even other features in Laravel, I try to build just a good foundation that I can feel confident about and release into the community for like further iteration, So like in V1 of the AI SDK, I don't necessarily set out to solve every single conceivable problem around developing with AI. I try to give like, okay, here's a good foundation and like some scaffolding that we can start from as a community and like have a conversation about, and then iterate from there over a period of months and then eventually years, to where things can evolve from there. But I try to put like a foundation in place to start from.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You mentioned like the fast code. Have you tried? Someone in the chat said Kimi 2.5. Have you tried Kimi
Yeah, I have tried
2.5
it.
with
It is
OpenCode?
fast. It is quite
Yeah.
fast. Yeah. And I think it's a glimpse of like, man, how like life-changing OBS things get even faster.
Yeah. And I'm with you though, in the sense of like most of the time, unless I'm doing like some kind of MVP, like the initial kickstart of a project, I might be using something like Cod Code with Opus 4.5, 4.6, or something like that, or Codex, or big feature. But most of the time, if I'm just like wanting to nail out certain things, either I'm hand coding it within Zed and I'm just tweaking, UI design, or tweaking like how I like parts of the code, or I'm just using something like Kimi 2.5 or something very quick because I like the feel of it being,
Yeah, it's
hey,
very
this is
fast.
I'm asking questions about my code base. I want it now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you use the Git desktop UI. Is that new,
Yeah.
or have you always been using that?
I really only use it for a few things. So like I don't use it for just like committing or checking out branches or anything like that. I'll just use the CLI. I use it for like kind of reviewing history in the repository. So like I want to see a list of the previous commits and kind of what files they changed. I find it just like a nice UI for doing that. Or like if I want to quickly like look at the stage changes and then revert a few things, it's really nice just to be able to like right click a file, revert changes. Like I don't have to like remember kind of like how to do this on the command line. And then again, just kind of for quickly reviewing things visually that the AI does, I kind of use it for that kind of thing. So it's more like, I almost use it more of like a diff viewer or like review
Okay.
tool than I don't really use it as like a, kind of the branch switching or committing even or anything like that.
Yeah.
For me, it's just a really quick kind of like review tool.
Yeah. And for those of us just joining, we're kind of using Claude Code to help us generate a application using the AI SDK. So we'll jump into the code that it's generated to make sure, one, that it's doing it the way that we would want it to be done, and then two, make sure that it works the way we want it to be done too. But the neat thing with the AI SDK is that since it is built, by Taylor in an eloquent way, it is designed in a way that's, whether we're using it for our chat context, like we're going to be using it within OpenAI, or the 11 Labs voice context, it's the same, the same API, the same model kind of the same knowledge kind of model when we're writing with it.
Looks like
Looks
it's
like it's
almost done. I got his test to
yeah.
pass at least.
That's
I
this
like how the
pass.
AI. I see this a lot when I use AI too. It's like, let me run Pint one more time to be safe. You know, it's like,
Some of my personal looks like it just finished. Some of my personal projects that I use, I have it set up with Rector, PHP Stan, and Pint, and so it's fun
yeah.
to have it make sure that does all of that. Is there anything, Taylor, that you usually feel that like it still doesn't get quite, and so usually like every single thing that you build, you check this one or two things?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. I
I guess
didn't. I
that
haven't
changes every
really.
week though too.
Yeah, it can change. I did nothing huge jumps out at me. I try to like kind of coach it along with my guidelines as much as I can.
Yeah. So let's go. We have a knowledge assistant that created. Looks like it's using the
I'd even use the
OpenAI provider.
attributes. Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
I love that. So a friendly knowledgeable assistance, um, and if the documents do not contain enough information to answer the question, say so honestly. Keep your answers concise and conversational. So just so everyone in the chat knows, we're building an app that if we go to resources and docs, we can create a markdown file in here and maybe even ask Claude Code to generate some for us. I might even do that just for fun. I'll say, I'll open up a new Claude Code and I'll say, we have this app that uses markdown files about the user in order to answer questions. Find some info on Taylor Otwell and generate relevant markdown files in the resources docs directory. Kickstart that off. But the goal is to be able to then take all these markdown documents and with this knowledge assistant, and so we should go into, I believe it's probably in a controller. Yeah, we have this ask controller here that's using, looks like Laravel AI transcription, files with document, audio. So I would assume, hopefully it's using it in the proper sense where we're getting an upload of an audio. We're going to transcribe it, get all the docs and the markdown, the resources docs directory. And then we're going to create a new knowledge assistant or a new instance of the knowledge assistant. And with that prompt, attach the attachments that we have in the markdown file, get a text. And then this is so clean. I love this, Taylor, like how easy it is to say, I just want an audio of this answer.
Yeah.
And so is 11 correct? I don't.
Yeah,
That might
that's
be correct.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is correct.
Sweet. Awesome. The one thing the one thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if this is just me not prompting well, but the one thing I've noticed within specifically within like the React context within Laravel, for some reason when it does stuff like within like a controller where it's hitting our API, it's not an inertia like use form request because you wouldn't use that for chat, for example.
Mhm.
For some reason,
Right.
it always likes to return it as an inertia page. And so you get like this JSON resource. So I always usually try to tell it to use Axios or something like that.
Yeah.
Then it seems to do well. Are you still an
Yeah, that's
Axios
cool.
user or
That
have you switched to
man,
Fetch?
that I do use Axios quite a bit, but this is actually something that's coming up in Inertia 3, which
Ooh,
I
okay.
think will be coming up, in the next. I don't want to speak for when it's coming out. I think it's coming out pretty soon. Let's say like in the next month or so. There's going to be a use HTTP thing that you won't have to really use Axios anymore with I don't even think we're including Axios by default anymore, which we
Okay.
do now in many different things. So yeah, we're kind of giving people kind of dropping that and going a little bit lighter weight, but still giving people some of the like affordances of Axios.
Yeah. No, I love that.
I think Joe Tannenbaum's going to talk about that at his Larrykonn Europe talk. Actually, he's going to kind of
Ooh.
give like an Inertia 3 preview or kind of demo.
Perfect. So yeah, stay tuned. I don't know off the top of my head if Larrykonn Europe talks are being streamed, but they're probably going to be recorded at the very least. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Question for Taylor: what's the recommended approach to implementing production grade guardrails? So I guess within the AI SDK, let's say you're doing this, and I can maybe talk about even for my simple demo of what I made
Mm.
sure to do. What are some things that you can think of in terms of prompt injection, misuse of LLM API keys, that kind of thing?
Yeah, this is something we haven't really built any opinions in thus far. I'm curious to see like what PRs come in or what sort of like community feedback is around this. Certain types of apps are sort of more vulnerable to this than others, depending on sort of like what you're doing and what tools you're exposing. And if you have tools that can, like, for example, delete records out of your database, that's of course like much more potentially serious in terms of like prompt injection or things like that versus some other use cases. So yeah, this is something we haven't baked anything in on yet, but I'm curious to see sort of like what people want and what people have found, most effective in other ecosystems that maybe we could learn from or borrow from.
Yeah, perfect. I love it. Can the Laravel AI SDK be extended or improved with plugins or add-ons?
Yeah, so I think like one of the cool areas we'll see sort of like community extension and collaboration is you could actually package up and distribute either tools or agents and tools as composer packages to give to other people. So maybe you write a tool that is reusable and it does some kind of functionality that maybe a lot of people would benefit from in different kinds of applications. You could actually package that up and distribute it, on Packagist as a tool that other people can use. So I think that's one of the primary ways you'll see people sort of like have plugins or so-called add-ons for the AI
Hmm,
SDK is like distributing those types of things throughout the community.
that's awesome. I'm curious to know how much uh, this got it right on you in terms of biography, philosophy, and projects is what
Oh yeah, this should be
what
interesting.
what Claude code. So we have biography. Um,
This all looks correct so far.
and we just asked Claude Code to generate all this for us. So I'm assuming pulling just
Yeah,
internet accessible things. Um, company grew from around 8 employees,
yeah,
started 24. Yeah. Wow.
yeah. This is all. Yeah, that all looks correct.
Simplicity and elegance warned against clever code.
Yeah. I think backwards compatibility has been something that has been more important in more recent years of Laravel. I think people would
Interesting.
question that in the early years of Laravel. But probably as most projects go, in the early years of Laravel, we were moving fast and breaking things. But lately, I
Yeah.
try to make it to where most people can upgrade, without any changes.
And it seems
But yeah,
like the
this,
backwards compatibility is even bigger now for AI because you almost have to have like like
mm,
things that happened a year ago, which models are getting smarter and it's more up to date, of course. But things that happened a
mhm.
year ago, if it's using that, it still works.
Correct. Yeah. 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 It is more important, like not to break things in the AI world. I agree. Uh,
Some projects. Uh,
yeah.
interesting.
Cool.
Okay, well,
Oh,
I'm
this
curious to
feels
see.
decent. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this works. Let's go ahead and composer run dev. That is my preferred way of getting things up. Are you still the same way, or PHP artisan server?
I use either this or Herd.
Okay, open this up. Okay, we have Larvis. I don't
That
know
is a
if
minimal
my
UI.
my sound that is very minimal. Let's go ahead. I don't know if my sound is gonna work. Let's see. Can you tell me a little bit more about Taylor's way of thinking through things when he builds a project? Ooh, audio must be WebM OGG Wave. I actually ran across this, I think, in my initial thing because I think it tries whatever AI did in the initial thing. I think it tried to save it as WebM, and by default, that's classified as video instead of audio.
Oh wow. Okay.
Um, let's go ahead and
WebM.
see. Have this error. I think it's because when we initially try to save the audio file, saves it in a video format of it, question mark. Back to the chat. If people want to contribute to the Laravel SDK, are there any specific tasks or areas you would like the community to help out with?
Oh, that is a good one. I mean,
That's a great question.
Some of the recent PRs we've been getting have been around just like adding different providers. So like someone contributed DeepSeek, someone contributed Mistral. This is also like a tricky one because some of the more complicated features, like some of the conversation stuff, I want to improve. Like I've got stuff in my head, and sometimes it's hard. And like if PRs are coming in and sort of like conflicting with that.
Yeah.
So let me think. I think that like agent chat artisan command thing is maybe a good one the community could riff on a little bit.
Ooh.
And then people have been adding providers. Um, Human tool approval. I mean, if someone wants to take a stab at that, go for it. I haven't started on it. That might be a good one someone could work on, but it's a little bit of a meaty one. It's not trivial probably.
Awesome. So yeah, Taylor had mentioned a little bit earlier, kind of like two things is chatting with agents that you automatically generate, maybe like in a PHP artisan agent chat command. And then human tool approval, correct me if I'm wrong, Taylor, but you mentioned it would be nice to be able to say, okay, there's specific tools that they happen, but before the response is actually generated, you have some form of human interaction to say, hey, this is good to go. Like, let's run that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Those would be great opportunities. Someone's mentioned token usage. That'd be interesting. I don't know if there's anything currently built in, correct?
You can get back to token usage from like a given prompt or whatever, or a given generation, but we're going to be building a lot of token usage tracking stuff into Nightwatch. So,
ooh, interesting.
People can of course sort of roll their own because you do have access to that, but we'll be also providing that in Nightwatch.
All right, let's go ahead and refresh, see if it does anything now. We'll say, can you tell me a little bit about how Taylor would think through creating a new package for Laravel? Upload not supported. Please try again PDF.
Oh, you can't upload Markdown files?
Markdown files. I would assume in our agents for the chat, we're just uploading. We're just collecting the documents as Markdown.
Oh, it's passing. It should just like inject them into the prompt. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Instead of uploading, because we get this error, instead of uploading the Markdown files, let's inject them directly into the prompt.
Yeah,
should be like that.
Yeah, see if that works.
See if that works.
I actually noticed that as well, that OpenAI doesn't accept a whole lot of file formats on these attachments. I was surprised. Like I don't think you can upload like a CSV. Like it's basically like PDF or image or I don't know why exactly
or something before you do
that. Yeah.
I guess maybe are they trying to not to comment on OpenAI's business plan or anything like that, but are they trying to move everything into vectors? Like you do that first, and then we'll do that. That's very, very interesting.
It looks like it is making the correct change, though. I saw where it was.
Yeah, I saw that it. So we're doing the docs with the question and prompt. So bigger prompt, but we don't probably be a little bit longer of a wait before we get an audio response if we're generating the prompt, pushing it to 11 labs, but still should work. I'm curious, and that might be a good, maybe if you're listening to this and you love 11 labs, I was actually going to take a stab at a PR, or I don't know if you've even tried it, Taylor, of like the ability to, I think they have voice agents where you can like, instead of having to transcribe and then get an answer and then put it back, I think they have the ability all wrapped up into one where you could upload a voice and it with a prompt or something like that, or a system prompt, which would make this a lot faster, at least for this demo. One more time, let's try this out. If I was Taylor, how would I think about building a new package for Laravel?
That's great. When building a new package, consider Otwell's development philosophy. Focus on simplicity and elegance, ensuring that the package is intuitive and enhances.
Okay.
That's
It is
some sick,
working, but yeah,
sick reverb on it.
doesn't look like it was sharing my audio. But yeah,
That's cool.
that worked. We have it. I'm assuming we could speak. Looks like we have a little bug speaking thing. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Maybe I added. Maybe clicking it a couple times added it. But I think because we're still saving it as memory in terms of like the ask controller. Do we have a? Okay, it probably is just a one-off. It probably would reset then. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think so.
Sweet. Awesome. It's cool to be able to get something like that up and running rather quickly. And honestly, there's not too much code involved with this. That's one of the things that I like about the AI SDK. Is like we have a knowledge assistant, being able to have, and kind of as a good recap for those watching, you have assistants that you can create, the PHP artisan make agent, sorry, not an assistant, where we have a particular class that all lives in. So instructions, as well as tools. Is there anything else that can live in there, Taylor?
Yeah, like the output schema,
okay.
Things like that.
And then with that agent, we can then create a new instance of it in things like controllers, where we're creating a new instance of this knowledge assistant or passing it that prompt. So we're using all the configuration that we're doing in that assistant, which also uses all the configuration of the AI config in terms of what's the default for audio, transcription, images, and embeddings, for example. And then it's as simple as using things like audio of the answer we're generating with and getting that particular response. And then it's converting that on the front end. But yeah, it's crazy how basically that whole demo was just really one controller, if in the sense of that. And doing a couple things on the back end of how fast it can be. And probably we could configure this quicker to use. I think in my my backup Larvis, I did a use cheapest model or use. Is there a use fastest model? Am I correct?
It's use smartest and use cheapest.
Use cheapest. So I think I did a use cheapest for like the actual response, and then that way it just was a lot faster in a lot of ways. But yeah, sweet. Let's go ahead and we're probably coming short up on time. So is there any? I'll jump into maybe one more question. Those of us who were in the chat for this whole period of time, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking a journey along with us on how the AI SDK was built, what it's good for, and also getting a lot of questions for Taylor. I know, Taylor, we're appreciative of you and your time of being here.
For sure.
Let's go ahead and see. There's not too many more questions. Taylor, what would be one thing that you would love to tell people about when it comes to like the AI SDK, whether in terms of building with it or just, inspirational kind of phrase to leave?
Oh, well, it makes, integrating AI with your Laravel app super easy. So, I mean, it is out. Composer require Laravel/AI. There's a Boost skill available. So install Boost and you will have the AI SDK skill that kind of tells Boost how to use it, and just start like, kind of like we did here, just like building something fun, some cool ideas, kind of learn how to use it, learn the ropes, and then hopefully can take it to, whatever you're doing at work or whatever kind of like business you're building, whatever. And hopefully it makes your life a little bit easier.
Awesome. I love it. And then for those who saw the other kind of demo that I had kind of put together for the kind of RAG instance and chatting with it, I'll put that link in the chat as well. But I'll also be able to on that demo, we'll also have like the GitHub link so that you can kind of take a look through what was built with that. I guess one last question to kind of go through that as well, as someone mentioned in terms of like Prism PHP, because I know you had mentioned a lot of some of the stuff in the background is using Prism PHP. Someone mentioned what does it look like to switch? What are some of the gaps at the moment in terms of switching?
I think we do use Prism for some of the tech stuff under the hood. Nice package built by TJ Miller. I think of Prism and AI SDK a little bit like I think of Query Builder and Eloquent. So like Prism has kind of this fluent Query Builder interface for like querying and doing AI things. And I think the AI SDK is like maybe like a layer of abstraction on top of that you might think of, where you have like agent classes and sort of like agent testing and things like that. So it's kind of like a little bit higher level of abstraction in terms of like code organization and like reuse, which I think is kind of like the main difference between the two. And then it kind of like goes beyond in a little bit around like the similarity search, the file search, some of that stuff that is maybe not available in Prism, but is available in the AI SDK, as well as some extra providers like 11 Labs and things like that. So yeah, it's just a little bit higher level of abstraction to get started. And then of course, maintained here by us at Laravel, but again, using Prism for a variety of things under the hood. And yeah, great library.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone in the chat. Thank you for being here and for joining us on this journey. And for those who are watching kind of on demand, thank you so much for watching this. Feel free to like and subscribe so that we can have additional content be pushed to you as quickly as possible. But thank you so much, Taylor, for joining us. And
yeah, it's been fun.
For everyone getting started with building within Laravel and maybe AI, you can use Composer, Require, Laravel/AI to get started, and use Laravel Boost because it does have a skill to be able to generate some of those things, even like that little demo that we just did. It was simple, but it was easy to show how the LLMs can use things like Laravel Boost and the AI SDK to create something pretty magical in such little code. But yeah, hopefully everyone has a fantastic day wherever you are or wherever you are joining and watching us from. Grab a Coke Zero for us and have some Taco Bell in favor of Taylor and the Laravel team. But thank you all so much.
Thanks. See ya.